Ave Imperator. I stood 3 meters from a dreadnought when it awakened from stasis. I watched a 10-ton war machine open its eyes after sleeping for 2 centuries. I heard the servos scream as ancient systems came online. I felt the ground shake as it took its first step in 200 years. And then I heard what it said. Not through Vox speakers, those came later. This was a psychic scream, transmitted directly into my mind by a consciousness too vast and terrible for mere machinery to contain. I remember everything, and I am hungry. Citizens, you do not understand what a dreadnought truly is. Let me show you. The recorder of NIGHTMRS. Ave Imperator. I am Chronicler Militant Hadrius Vex, assigned to the Departamento Munitorum's Xenocide Documentation Division. My duty is to record the Imperium's most effective weapons against Xeno's threats, to catalog their capabilities, to understand what makes them effective so that these methods can be replicated across other theaters of war. For 43 years, I have documented orbital bombardments, virus bombs, exterminatus protocols, and weapons so terrible that their very existence is classified. I have witnessed horrors that would drive lesser men mad. I have seen entire species erased from existence. But nothing, prepared me for the day I was assigned to document a dreadnought deployment. The fortress monastery of the Crimson Fists sits on the death world of Rin's world, a massive structure of stone and adamantium that has stood for 10,000 years. Deep within its foundations lies the Reclusium, the Hall of the Honored Dead, where dreadnoughts sleep between battles. I was brought there to witness the awakening of Brother Ancient Alessio, who had been in stasis for 217 years. The chapter master wanted documentation of a dreadnought deployment for training purposes, standard procedure, routine assignment. I thought I was merely going to watch a machine power up. I was catastrophically wrong. The Chamber of Sleeping Giants. The Reclusium extends 300 meters beneath the monastery, a vast cathedral carved from living rock. The ceiling disappears into darkness 50 meters overhead. The walls are lined with alcoves, each containing a dreadnought chassis in various states of readiness. But these are not mere machines waiting for pilots. These are tombs, walking sarcophagi, and the warriors sealed within them are not dead. They are something far stranger and more terrible. Brother Ancient Alessio's alcove was marked with purity seals dating back 4 millennia. His chassis bore the scars of 300 separate engagements. Alien blood, xeno-ichor that should have evaporated centuries ago, still stained the adamantium plating in places where nothing mortal could reach to clean. The tech priests moved with reverent care as they prepared the awakening ritual. They chanted in binary, prayers to the machine god mingled with activation protocols. They anointed the chassis with sacred oils. They lit incense that filled the chamber with acrid smoke. I watched all this from a safe distance, or what I thought was a safe distance. 20 meters back, behind a reinforced observation barrier, my recording equipment trained on the dreadnought. Chronicler Vex, the tech priest supervising the awakening, warned me, I must advise you to step back further. The ancient ones do not always wake peacefully. I should have listened. The moment of awakening. The activation sequence began with the life support systems. I heard fluids beginning to circulate through hidden tubes, saw pressure gauges rising as the sarcophagus's internal environment normalized. Medical displays flickered to life, showing vital signs I could barely comprehend: neural activity patterns, chemical balances, electromagnetic field strengths. Then the power core activated. A low hum that rapidly rose in pitch until it became a subsonic vibration I felt in my bones rather than heard with my ears. The dreadnought's armor plates began to glow with barely contained energy. The tech priest spoke, Brother Ancient Alessio, in the name of the Emperor and the Primarch Rogel Dorn, I call you forth from honored rest. The chapter has need of your strength once more. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the Dreadnought's eyes ignited. Not metaphorically. The visual sensors literally burst into light, harsh, actinic blue-white radiance that cast sharp shadows across the entire chamber. I had to shield my eyes, my recording equipment automatically darkening to prevent overload. And in that moment of blinding light, I felt something I had never experienced before: absolute primal terror. Because those were not the eyes of a machine. They were the eyes of something that had been human once, millennia ago, and had been transformed into something that transcended and violated humanity in equal measure. The Dreadnought moved. The sound was catastrophic. Metal screaming against metal as joints that had been locked for 2 centuries suddenly articulated. Hydraulics shrieking as they bore impossible loads. Servos howling as ancient motors spun up to operational speed. But beneath those mechanical sounds, I heard something else. Something that made my blood freeze and my augmetic heart skip several beats. I heard breathing. Not the rhythmic hiss of a respirator, not the mechanical cycle of an air circulation system, but actual, organic breathing, ragged, desperate, the sound of lungs that had not drawn breath in 200 years suddenly remembering how. The Dreadnought's Vox speakers remained silent, but I heard it anyway, transmitted directly into my mind by some form of localized psychic phenomenon I still do not fully understand. Where am I? When am I? How long has it been? The tech priest responded calmly. You are in the reclusiam of the Crimson Fists, Brother Ancient. It has been 217 years since your last deployment. 217 years. The Dreadnought's massive form shuddered, not from mechanical fault, but from the pilot's distress manifesting in the chassis. I watched 10 tons of armored war machine express an emotion, grief, rage, despair, I could not tell, through tremors that made the ground shake. I was fighting orcs, the voice in my mind continued. The siege of Gospora, we were holding the eastern gate. Warboss Urgok's elite were trying to breach. I remember a power claw crushing. Everything went dark. That was 217 years ago, Brother Ancient, the tech priest confirmed. You have rested well. You are needed again. 217 years. I have lost 217 years. Everyone I knew is dead. Everyone I served with has been dust for generations. And I am still here, still trapped in this tomb you call an honor. The tech priest's expression did not change, but I saw his hand move to a control panel. Sedatives, I realized later. He was prepared to force Alessio back into unconsciousness if the awakening became too unstable. The first SDPS. But Alessio did not require sedation. Something changed in those blazing eyes, a shift from confusion and grief to cold, terrible focus. I am needed, he repeated, and this time the words came through the Vox speakers as well as psychically. Then tell me, what must I kill? This is what you must understand about dreadnoughts. They are not merely weapons. They are warriors who have been reduced to weapons. All the complexity of human experience, all the subtle emotions and motivations that drive us, all of it filtered through the singular lens of war. When Alessio asked, "What must I kill?" he was not being crude or simplistic. He was expressing the only purpose his existence still held. Everything else, joy, love, peace, rest, had been stripped away. Only war remained. The tech priest provided the briefing. A Tyranid splinter fleet had entered the system. The chapter was deploying in force. Ancient Alessio's experience fighting Tyranids 400 years ago would prove invaluable. As Alessio processed this information, I watched him test his chassis. Each movement was precise, controlled, but I could see the effort it required. Raising one massive arm required concentration that would have been unconscious in a flesh-and-blood marine. Turning his torso involved calculations that baseline humans could not comprehend. He was relearning how to exist. Every deployment, after every stasis period, he had to relearn how to pilot a body that wasn't his, how to interpret sensory input that made no evolutionary sense, how to be a consciousness trapped in metal. And then he took his first step. The ground shook. Not metaphorically. I literally felt the stone floor ripple beneath my feet as 10 tons of armored Dreadnought transferred weight from one leg to another. Dust rained from the ceiling. Nearby servitors lost balance and collapsed. Alessio took another step, then another, each one more confident than the last as muscle memory, or whatever passed for it in a brain wired to machinery, reasserted itself. He was walking. A tomb was walking. A warrior 2 centuries dead was moving through the world, powered by technology that bordered on the heretical and willpower that transcended mortal comprehension. And I understood in that moment why the enemies of the Imperium feared dreadnoughts. The psychic presence. But the physical terror of a dreadnought is only the beginning. What truly horrified me was the psychic presence. I am not a psyker. I have no warp sight, no ability to perceive the immaterium. But standing in that chamber as Alessio fully awakened, I felt something pressing against my consciousness like a vast weight. It was his will, the sheer, concentrated force of a space marine's determination, amplified by centuries of service and refined by endless suffering into something sharp enough to cut reality. Every human generates a small psychic presence, an echo in the warp, a ripple in the immaterium. Most are so faint as to be undetectable. Psychers generate larger presences. Space Marines, with their enhanced biology and conditioned minds, generate presences significant enough to be noticed by warp predators. But a dreadnought pilot, who has spent centuries in isolation with nothing to do but think, who has been stripped of every physical distraction and forced to exist as pure consciousness for extended periods, their psychic presence becomes something else entirely. I felt Alessio's presence like a spotlight turned on my soul. Not intentionally. He was not trying to intimidate me. But simply existing near him meant existing in the shadow of a consciousness so vast and focused that my own thoughts felt small and insignificant by comparison. The tech priests felt it too. I saw several make warding signs. One whispered a prayer to the Omnissiah. Another's hands shook as he performed routine diagnostics. This is what the propaganda holovids never show you. A dreadnought is not just physically imposing. It is psychically overwhelming. Being near one is like standing at the base of a mountain. You are reminded of your own insignificance, your mortality, your fundamental smallness in the face of something ancient and terrible. "I am ready," Alessio declared. His Vox speakers amplified the words until they echoed through the entire reclusium. "Load me into the deployment bay. Give me my weapons. Show me the enemy." And in his voice, both the mechanical reproduction through speakers and the psychic resonance in my mind, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Eagerness. Not duty, not reluctant acceptance of necessary violence, but genuine, fierce eagerness to kill. Because that was all he had left. That was all he would ever have again. And he had learned, across centuries of entombment, to find joy in the only thing his existence still permitted. The battlefield deployment. Fellow citizens, I accompanied the Crimson Fists to the war zone. My role was to document the Dreadnought's combat effectiveness, to record how ancient Alessio performed against the Tyrannid threat. I had witnessed battles before. I had seen orbital bombardments reduce continents to glass. I had watched virus bombs exterminate billions. I had documented the aftermath of exterminatus protocols. But I had never witnessed a dreadnought in combat. The deployment zone was the hive city of Gospora Minor, the same city where Alessio had fallen 2 centuries before. The Tyrannids had overrun the lower levels, their bioforms swarming through hab blocks and industrial sectors like a living flood. The Crimson Fists established a defense perimeter at the Mid-Hive Transitway, a massive multi-level structure designed to allow millions of workers to commute between levels. Now, it served as a choke point where Space Marines could control Tyranid access to the upper hive. Alessio's Dreadnought was positioned at the center of the defensive line. Around him, tactical squads prepared firing positions. Devastator squads set up heavy weapons. Assault squads readied for countercharges. But every single Space Marine, gave Alessio's position a wide berth. They did not stand near him. They did not casually converse within his shadow. They treated his presence the way baseline humans treat a live munitions dump, with respect, caution, and the awareness that proximity might be fatal. I asked a veteran sergeant why they maintained such distance. "Chronicler," he said quietly, "the Ancient Ones are not like us anymore. They have seen too much, killed too many, existed too long in states of consciousness we cannot comprehend. They are still our brothers, yes, still loyal to the Emperor and the Chapter, but they are also other, and being too close to that otherness for too long affects you in ways you might not notice until it's too late." The first kill. The Tyranids came in a scuttling tide of chitin and claws. Hormagaunts in the hundreds, bounding across the transitway's span with inhuman speed. Behind them, larger organisms, warriors, carnifexes, living siege engines bred for maximum destructive capacity. The Space Marines opened fire with disciplined precision. Bolter rounds tore through alien flesh. Heavy bolters scythed through swarms. Lascannons punched through heavy armor. But Alessio waited. I watched him through my recording equipment, tracking his movements, analyzing his stance. He stood absolutely motionless, his weapon systems armed but inactive, his sensory arrays tracking the approaching horde. He was patient, terrifyingly patient, like a predator that has learned to wait for exactly the right moment to strike. The Tyranids closed to 50 meters, 40, 30. Then Alessio moved. "Citizens, I need you to understand. When I say he moved, I do not mean he simply activated. I mean he exploded into violence with speed that should have been impossible for something his size. His assault cannon spun up in a nanosecond, the barrels blurring into invisibility as they achieved firing velocity. The sound was catastrophic, not individual shots but a continuous roar like reality itself being torn apart. The effect on the Tyranids was devastating. The assault cannon fired depleted uranium rounds at a rate of 6,000 per minute. Each round was capable of penetrating light vehicle armor. When hundreds of those rounds struck Xeno's bioforms per second, the results were liquefaction. The first rank of Hormagaunts simply ceased to exist, not killed, erased, reduced to component atoms by the sheer volume of fire. The second rank fared no better, nor the third. Alessio advanced, walking through the storm of his own gunfire. Where the assault cannon created a cone of death, his power fist reached out with surgical precision to crush any creature that survived the bullet hail. I watched a Tyranid warrior, a bioform larger than most humans, armored in carapace that could shrug off bolter fire, try to close with Alessio. It was fast, far faster than any baseline human. Its bone swords crackled with bioelectric energy capable of disrupting power armor. It might as well have been moving in slow motion. Alessio's power fist caught it mid-leap. The energy field surrounding the fist activated, and I heard the warrior's carapace crack like breaking pottery. Then Alessio squeezed. The warrior exploded. Not metaphorically, it literally burst apart from internal pressure as the power fist crushed its thoracic cavity. Alien blood and ichor sprayed across Alessio's chassis in a grotesque baptism. And through my recording equipment's audio pickup, I heard Alessio laugh. Not a human laugh, not even a cruel laugh, but something worse, the laugh of something that has forgotten how to experience joy except through killing, that has been reduced to such fundamental simplicity that destruction is its only remaining pleasure. That laugh echoed across the battlefield, amplified by Vox speakers powerful enough to be heard over the roar of combat, and every tyrannid organism within hearing range hesitated for just an instant. Because even the hive mind, with its vast alien intelligence, recognized the sound of something more terrifying than itself. The fury, UNLESHED. What followed was not battle, it was massacre. Alessio advanced into the tyrannid swarm like a harvester through grain. His assault cannon never stopped firing. His power fist crushed everything within reach. Where tyrannids tried to swarm him, he simply spun, using his own chassis mass as a weapon to pulverize creatures beneath his armored bulk. A Carnifex, a biotitan easily matching Alessio's mass, charged him from the flank. Its crushing claws could tear through ceramic. Its armored carapace could shrug off lascannon hits. It was specifically designed to destroy armored targets. Alessio caught one crushing claw with his power fist. The Carnifex's momentum was enormous. Tons of bioengineered muscle driving forward with unstoppable force. Alessio stopped it. Simply stopped it, his Dreadnought chassis absorbing and negating all that kinetic energy. For a frozen instant, the Carnifex strained against Alessio's grip, its alien musculature bulging as it tried to break free. Then Alessio tore the claw off. The biofluid that served as the Carnifex's blood sprayed in arterial gouts. The creature's psychic scream of pain was loud enough that even I, no psyker, felt it like ice picks driven into my mind. Alessio drove his assault cannon directly into the wound he had created. He fired. The Carnifex detonated from the inside out as hundreds of depleted uranium rounds tore through its internal organs. Chunks of chitin and meat scattered across a 100-meter radius. But Alessio was already moving to the next target, and the next, and the next. I documented everything, my recording equipment capturing each kill, each movement, each demonstration of horrifying efficiency. But I realized something disturbing. Alessio was not fighting defensively. He was not holding the line, protecting the perimeter, fulfilling the tactical objective. He was hunting. Every movement pushed deeper into the tyrannid swarm. Every kill took him further from the defensive position. He was not trying to survive or even to win. He was trying to maximize the number of aliens he could kill before something finally stopped him. And the tyrannids, driven by the hive mind's cold calculations, recognized him as the primary threat. They redirected entire swarms toward his position, sacrificing hundreds of lesser organisms to slow him down so that their heavier bioforms could converge. It didn't matter, Alessio killed them all. The moment of truth. The turning point came when a hive tyrant emerged from the lower levels. This was not a lesser organism. This was a synapse creature, a node of the hive mind given flesh, a bioform that combined intelligence with devastating combat capability. It stood twice Alessio's height, armed with bone swords larger than a human, wrapped in psychic energy that made reality warp around it. The hive tyrant had killed space marines before, dozens of them. I had seen the pick captures from previous engagements. I had read the after-action reports describing how it had torn through an entire tactical squad in under a minute. It focused all four of its eyes on Alessio, and I felt the psychic pressure as two vastly inhuman intelligences recognized each other across the battlefield. For perhaps 5 seconds they simply stared at each other, the Dreadnought and the Tyrant, the entombed warrior and the hive node, two apex predators measuring each other, calculating, preparing. Then they moved simultaneously. The hive tyrant's speed was supernatural, propelled by muscles that violated normal biological limits and psychic energy that accelerated it beyond physics. Its bone swords blurred, aimed at Alessio's chassis joints where adamantium plating was thinnest. Alessio met its charge head-on. The collision shook the entire transitway. I felt the impact through the ground 60 meters away. Lesser structures would have collapsed. The Hive Tyrant's first bone sword struck Alessio's chassis at the shoulder joint. The blade, edged with biometallic compounds sharper than any human weapon, bit deep. Sparks flew. Metal shrieked. But the blade stopped, trapped, wedged in armor that refused to part despite forces that should have cleaved it. Alessio's power fist clamped onto the tyrant's primary arm. Energy fields crackled. Chitin cracked. The Hive Tyrant struck again with its second bone sword, aiming for Alessio's visual sensors. If it could blind him, it could win. Alessio caught the blade. With his assault cannon, the rotating barrel stopped the bone sword's edge through sheer mechanical force, grinding against it, metal against biometal. And while the Hive Tyrant was locked in place, committed to its attack, Alessio did something I had not anticipated. He headbutted it. A Dreadnought's chassis mass is approximately 10 tons. When that mass is moving at even moderate velocity, the kinetic energy is catastrophic. Alessio slammed his armored skull section directly into the Hive Tyrant's head section with enough force to crater Ferrocrete. The Tyrant's psychic scream was loud enough to knock nearby Tyranids unconscious. I felt it like a sonic weapon, my augmetic components momentarily disrupting. Alessio didn't stop. He fired his assault cannon at point-blank range, directly into the Hive Tyrant's thorax. At such proximity, the rotating barrels literally ground through chitin like a saw, while simultaneously pumping hundreds of rounds into the creature's vital organs. The Hive Tyrant died in approximately 7 seconds. The greatest bioform on the battlefield, the apex predator of the Tyranid swarm, reduced to twitching meat by a warrior who had been fighting such creatures for 800 years. Alessio dropped the corpse and immediately turned to find his next target. The horror of victory. The battle lasted 4 hours. In that time, Alessio personally killed 743 Tyranid organisms. I counted. I documented every single kill. When the last alien fell, when the Hive fleet's ground forces finally withdrew, Alessio stood in the center of a circle of dead Xenos 50 meters in radius. His chassis was covered in alien blood. His armor showed dozens of impacts, scratches, dents, but no critical damage. His weapon systems were depleted but functional. He stood there motionless for 17 minutes. I approached cautiously, my recording equipment still active. The other Space Marines maintained their distance, weapons ready despite the battle being over. "Brother Ancient Alessio," I called out, "the enemy has withdrawn, you may stand down." For several heartbeats, there was no response. Then his Vox speakers activated, and I heard something in his voice I had not expected. "Disappointment." "Is that all? The swarm withdraws already?" He paused. I had just remembered what it felt like to truly fight, and now it's over. One of the Crimson Fist's sergeants approached. "Brother Ancient, you performed admirably. Your kill count exceeded all expectations. The chapter is honored by your service." "My kill count," Alessio repeated, and this time there was something bitter in his mechanical voice. "Yes, that is what I am now, is it not? Not a warrior, not a brother, just a kill count. A walking weapon to be deployed when the numbers justify my awakening." The sergeant did not know how to respond to that. Alessio turned his blazing eyes toward me. "Chronicler, you documented everything." I confirmed that I had. "Good, then let them see what I have become. Let them see what their honor creates. I was a Marine once. I had brothers, aspirations, thoughts beyond killing. Now I count my worth in alien corpses because that is the only value I have left." He began walking back toward the deployment zone, each step shaking the ground. As he passed through the Space Marine lines, every warrior stepped back, not from respect, from fear. Because they all understood what I had just witnessed. A dreadnought is not a weapon operated by a Marine. It is a warrior who has become a weapon, who has been stripped of everything that made him human until only the capacity for violence remains. And that is truly terrifying. The interview that revealed everything. After the battle, I requested permission to interview Brother Ancient Alessio for my documentation. The chapter master approved, perhaps hoping that official records would show the Dreadnought program in a positive light. They regretted that decision. I was given access to Alessio for 1 hour before he would be returned to stasis. We spoke in a private chamber, though private is relative when dealing with a 10-ton war machine. Chronicler Vex, Alessio began. His Vox speakers turned low to approximate a conversational tone. Before we begin, I must ask, are you going to write propaganda? Are you going to describe me as a noble warrior who serves beyond death, who exemplifies the highest ideals of the Adeptus Astartes? I told him I would write the truth. The truth, he repeated. Very well. Then here is truth. I am a monster, not metaphorically, not in some philosophical sense. I am literally a monster created by the Imperium to kill its enemies, maintained in perpetual existence because I am too effective at killing to be allowed to die. He continued. I was entombed 812 years ago. In that time, I have been deployed 173 times. I have killed approximately 47,000 enemy combatants across dozens of battlefields. Orcs, tyrannids, heretics, demons. I have killed them all with equal efficiency. Do you know what that number means? 47,000 kills. That is more than most Space Marines kill in their entire service. That is a death toll that would make some Imperial Guard regiments envious. And I feel nothing about it. Not pride, not guilt, not satisfaction or disgust, just nothing. Because I have killed so many for so long that individual deaths no longer register as meaningful. They are simply data points, numbers, confirmation that my weapon systems functioned correctly. This is what happens when you force a consciousness to exist for centuries with only one purpose. You reduce that consciousness to that purpose. You strip away everything else, compassion, curiosity, joy, love, until only the core function remains. I am a killing machine, not a warrior who uses machines, a machine that happens to contain what used to be a warrior. The psychological horror. Chronicler, have you ever wondered what it feels like to be a dreadnought? Not the physical sensation. I have grown accustomed to the sensory distortion, the disconnect between intention and action, but the psychological experience. I admitted I had not. Let me describe it for you. Imagine you wake up after 2 centuries. Your last memory is of battle, the fury, the adrenaline, the clarity of purpose that comes from combat. Then suddenly you are being awakened, told that centuries have passed, that everyone you knew is dead, that you are being deployed again. There is no transition, no time to process grief or loss, no opportunity to understand what has happened. You go directly from battle to stasis to battle again, with only brief moments of consciousness in between. In 812 years, I have experienced approximately 47 years of consciousness. The rest, 765 years, I spent in chemical unconsciousness, dreamless, timeless, simply gone. But here is the horror. Even during stasis, even in that chemical void, part of me remains aware. Not consciously thinking, but experiencing duration in some strange, non-linear way. Time passes, but I do not experience it as passing. I simply exist in the void, waiting. And when I wake, when consciousness returns, I carry with me the psychological weight of all that lost time. I know, intellectually, that centuries have passed, but I cannot remember them, cannot point to experiences or growth or change. The person I was 800 years ago is functionally identical to the person I am now, because I have not lived those intervening years. I have merely endured them. This creates a kind of temporal dislocation that drives some dreadnoughts mad. We exist in multiple timeframes simultaneously. We remember the past with perfect clarity, too perfect, because space marine memory is enhanced. But we have no sense of continuous existence from past to present. It is like living in a series of snapshots, each separated by centuries of void. Do you understand what I am describing? I am temporally fractured, psychologically shattered, held together only by combat conditioning and the artificial unity imposed by my purpose. The truth about the Kill Fury. But the worst part, the truly monstrous part, is what happens during battle. Chronicler, when I was deployed against the Tyranids, you documented my actions. You saw me kill 743 organisms. You heard me laugh while doing so. That laugh was not performance. It was not bravado meant to intimidate the enemy. It was genuine pleasure. I enjoyed killing them. I felt joy, real, visceral joy, with every Xenos I destroyed. And that should horrify you because it horrifies me. I remember being a Marine who took no pleasure in killing. I remember executing enemies because duty demanded it, not because I wanted to. I remember the somber satisfaction of a battle won, not the manic glee of slaughter. But 800 years of having nothing but combat has rewired my psychology. When killing is your only function, when it is the only thing your existence permits, your mind adapts. It finds ways to make that function pleasurable, because the alternative is 8 centuries of joyless, mechanical violence. So now I enjoy killing. I look forward to it. The periods between deployments are torture not just because of the stasis, but because I am denied the one thing that still makes me feel alive. This is what the Imperium has done to me. They have taken a warrior who fought for duty and honor and transformed him into something that fights for the pleasure of destruction. I am a monster created by necessity, maintained by tradition, and deployed whenever the Imperium needs something killed with maximum efficiency and minimal compassion. And there are thousands of us. In every chapter, in every fortress monastery, dreadnoughts sleep and wake and kill and sleep again, each of us slowly transforming into the very things we once fought against. Consciousnesses that exist only to destroy, that find meaning only in death. The warning nobody, WNTS to hear. Chronicler Vex, I am going to tell you something that the chapter masters do not want documented. Something that threatens the entire mythology we have built around the Dreadnought program. We are not heroes. We are not honored warriors serving beyond death. We are cautionary tales. Every scout who looks at a Dreadnought and thinks, I hope to earn such honor someday, is wrong. They should look at us and think, Emperor, preserve me from such a fate. Because entombment is not reward, it is punishment. We are punished for being too useful to discard. Our gene seed is too valuable. Our experience is too rare. Our symbolic importance to chapter morale is too great. So we are kept alive, decade after decade, century after century, slowly losing our minds while the chapters call it service. And we cannot object, cannot refuse, because we have been conditioned from our earliest days as scouts to accept this fate as the highest honor. To reject it would be to admit that everything we believe about duty and sacrifice is built on lies. So we accept, we endure, we kill, and we slowly become the monsters the Imperium needs us to be. This is the truth of the Dreadnought. We are terrifying not because of our weapons or our armor or our combat effectiveness. We are terrifying because we are what happens when human beings are reduced to pure function, when consciousness is stripped of everything except one purpose, when warriors are transformed into weapons that happen to retain vestigial memories of humanity. Look at me, Chronicler. Look at what I have become. This is the end state of the Dreadnought program. This is what awaits every Marine who survives catastrophic injury only to be entombed. We become angels of death. And angels, even angels in service to the Emperor, are not meant to be human. The final documentation. I asked Alessio what he wanted me to include in my final report. Include everything. The kills, the efficiency, the battlefield performance, yes, but also include this.